January 26, 2026, and the week following. We have 3 weeks until Saturn enters the sign of Aries, 4 weeks until Saturn and Neptune conjunct each other. But today, on Monday, January 26th, Neptune has moved into the sign of Aries. So we are officially one domino down of three major dominoes to come before we essentially begin to restructure reality around our dream of the present moment. Neptune in Aries is essentially asking each and every one of us to take reality at face value right now. Do not get caught up in confusion anymore. Do not gaslight yourself based on what you think that you do not know. Simply, there is nothing to know. We're not ladder climbing anymore. Okay. Neptune itself is the function of unconditional love. And so wherever sign it is in is simply just saying where we are collectively practicing unconditional love in that moment. So now that it's in Aries, we are practicing unconditional love of self in the present moment. Okay. Now, I'm going to put a bunch of information in the description about this week ahead and the notes of what I think. But in this video, I'll probably just wax on a little bit about the way that I see things fitting together from a higher perspective. And to that end, I want to talk about Pluto a little bit because the objectivity of Neptune and unconditional love being something that we are finding within the self and within every single present moment at this point is everlasting, pervasive, timeless. Okay. But what is really happening right now in the sense of the journey of our life, the evolution of our soul, if you believe you have one, is Pluto in Aquarius. Okay. And Pluto in Aquarius wants you to kill off your subjectivity. Pluto in Aquarius wants each and every one of us to completely reset our relationship to objectivity. Okay, to zoom out and to disidentify, even with the process of individuation. Okay, it wants us to be able to expand our capacity to redefine what our individuality is, what our humanity is on the inside and on the outside. So, power and desire and death are really all of the same archetype when it comes to Pluto. Because ultimately, what we are wanting is to osmose with something else, to evolve, to become something more and greater. And I think that until now, until Pluto's been in Aquarius, there's been, culturally, we've been practicing this idea of ladder climbing, of, you know, putting the pieces together in the right order so that we can get out what we want, right? Learning the system so that you can succeed. This idea that there even is a path to walk towards success is completely being thrown out now. Individual humanity is being raised to focus on, in the exact present moment, Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries, the truth of the present moment and the right to, not even the right to, this is no argument. Okay, this is not at its essence, right? This isn't to say there won't be wars fought over this, but I think what people are unwinding the knots around right now is the unconditional love that exists in every single present moment with Neptune in Aries, and how that unconditional love allows us to see ourselves differently. And I think in order to get there, many of us have been through very challenging, intimate relationships over the last several years, especially as Pluto's been moving back and forth between the end of Capricorn and the beginning of Aquarius. Of course, Pluto is now in Aquarius for good, has been for a minute. Pluto also just reset its cycle with all of the personal planets, although this week, Tuesday, Mars will make its reset to Pluto, so that's pretty big. But Pluto's reset Pluto's going to take 20 years to move through all of Aquarius. And almost every year, every 1 or 2 years, we're going to get a personal reset with Pluto as all of the planets move around the zodiac and make a conjunction to Pluto essentially. And so imagine yourself at the beginning of this journey of whatever just reset in your intimate life and in your emotional life. That's going to happen like 20 more times. And I'm not saying with the same intensity, and it's not going to be exactly the same every time. Things are always going to change, right? But if you consider what the impulses that you have had to see yourself differently through your desires, like because of what you really want, it's making you confront a part of yourself or making you confront ways that you haven't valued your own humanity. In a sense, you haven't valued your own truth in this present moment. Okay. And to be fair, Neptune's been in the sign of Pisces before today, before the 26th. And there's just been a profound haze. I think, interestingly, the idea of unconditional love with Neptune and Pisces probably makes a little bit more intuitive sense. We can feel into that, the literal field of energy, if you will, that we live in with Neptune and Pisces was unconditional love. But when Neptune has now moved into Aries, this is something we act on. This is something we act through, or rather, something unconditional love acts through us. Okay. And it is in that where we now create new conditions to think about ourselves differently with Pluto in Aquarius. Okay. And so this Aquarius season, this final weeks of Aquarius season, I think we are edging closer and closer into nothing. Okay. I don't think there's something we're going to hit. I don't think there's a big moment that will ultimately reset everything. No, what happens is there's like dominoes that are falling in 3 weeks, in 4 weeks, and then in April, and then in the summer. And then it's just going to kind of continue because this is what astrology is. Okay. Astrology is just cycles that don't end. And we happen to just be living in a time over the last 5 years where these like massive cycles were coinciding, right? The 2020 time was like, I don't even know what the timeline was for that, but we hadn't had a like Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, South Node conjunction all in the sign of Capricorn. Like that hadn't happened in like ages, like a very long time. But here's the thing. It's because when things that don't happen often, when they happen, it resets our neural network a little bit, and we tend to want to reject it because it's not who we think we are. It's not the patterns that make sense to us. And so because we think we are the patterns in our brain, it's very difficult. But I think since 2020, since that time, we are learning, we are practicing elasticity, we are practicing change in a huge, huge way that's only going to become more pronounced, let's say, when Uranus enters Gemini later in April, even when Uranus moves direct next week. Right? Uranus being very much so the same archetype as Aquarius, being the ruler of Aquarius. Uranus is the edge of the known, okay? And kind of depending on where you're at in your life journey, the edge of wherever you're coming from is literally quite simply the outskirts of what is normal and what you do not know yet, but what you will know in time. Uranus is often correlated to change and sudden shocks and things, but it only appears that way. It's not inherently shocking because nothing is inherently anything. Everything is relative to each other. And so the Uranian archetype, when we feel Uranus things in our life, it necessarily means that we are at the edge. We've been pushed to the edge. We find ourselves at the edge. We are leading ourselves over an edge. And once you're there, you can start to experience things for the first time, bring them down from like the ether into your mind. You process them, and then you slowly bring it down into density, and you say, oh, I'm going to going to make this reality now. But ultimately, Neptune in Aries, Saturn eventually 3 weeks time going to be in Aries. This is about choice. This is no longer about there being some huge fated destiny that you must fulfill. This is about you choosing that destiny, because I truly think that Pluto and Aquarius is killing off the algorithm on every level, whether that's the social media algorithm, whether that's the algorithm of how fate and free will work. I think that's the way our brains are going to break a little bit, is because it's not just a raise of our own awareness. Nothing ever happens in a silo. Okay. I think reality will continue to break, and that's it. And it's not a bad thing. It just simply is. It breaks to make space for new ways. Okay. And there will be expressions of that in the collective. There will be expressions of that in our individual personal lives. And when crazy things happen, we see where our edge is, where we begin to condemn one thing and promote another thing. And then maybe we see where how we've been raised, where our culture has promoted that worldview, and whether or not it's still something that we personally want to champion. Because, as I'm saying, from my perspective, unconditional love is the goal, is the point, to increase each of our capacity in order to hold unconditional love for absolutely everything. And that coming from a deep desire to share the power of humanity, to share the power of our individuality amongst groups of people. Okay. Something I wanted to say, I might end with this, is we have this interesting thing from now until I think it's like February 11th, where all of the rulerships of the chart basically boil down to a mutual reception between Uranus and Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus and Venus in Aquarius. That's called a mutual reception because Venus rules Taurus and Uranus rules Aquarius. And so what's happening right now is there's something very intimate, which is Venus, about our mindset or our community, which is allowing us to totally change our physical reality and our resources. And that everything else in the chart by rulership boils down to this mutual reception, which means that it's not a time to just be in these lofty ideals. It's a time to be allowing yourself to ping pong between allowing your resources to have their own intelligence, allowing like the Taurus, like fruits of reality to show you something, to have their own intelligence, allowing your body to have its own intelligence and trusting that. And then also realizing where your mind is open in a new way. Okay. Venus is simply where you are open. And in Aquarius, this is about your mind. And so this can be in your literal mind, and it will also be in your physical life with a new person, a new group of people, a new idea. Okay. And so this week, and this rulership thing, the way it boils down, it'll be for another few weeks at least. But I think because of the Mars Pluto conjunction, there's such a profound Aquarian emphasis right now. And the fact that the ruler of Aquarius is Uranus and Taurus, and then Venus, the ruler of Uranus and Taurus, is in Aquarius, and we have this mutual reception. And so there's something, again, very deeply intimate about how our minds are changing. And it's probably in a way we never would have expected. It's kind of the thing where we're perfectly open to it, but it's just off kilter a little bit. It's off kilter a little bit, but it's very present. It's very passionate. It's very there, right? We have this huge Aquarius pileup. And then again, this will be put in more information in the description, but we have both the Mars Pluto conjunction resetting itself on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, we have the Mercury Venus conjunction resetting itself, which speaks to an understanding of this Venusian intimacy around our material intelligence. Being able to rationally understand, which is Mercury, why we are uniquely open to this new resource in our life, essentially, even if it wasn't what we expected. And that reset just makes it easy to understand, to express appreciation or love for whatever this openness is. So the other thing is we have really nice lunar transits to this Venus Mercury. When the moon is in Gemini, it'll be making a beautiful trine to not only the sun, but also to the other air sign in Aquarius, the Venus Mercury conjunction in Aquarius. And so, really, mid this week, all of this really lofty stuff I'm saying is actually so immediate in our personal lives. And part of, I think, this Pluto in Aquarius, which is killing off our minds, which is saying, like, stop being so intellectual about what's going on and be in your body, especially for the last few months of Uranus being in Taurus. Like, really let your body change. Like, listen to your body, listen to the electricity of your body, what your body wants. Because once Uranus leaves Taurus, that physicality is going to be a little bit less sparky. And there's no real, moral quality of difference between Uranus being in Taurus versus Gemini, where it's going. But I will say, things are about to get even more heady and intellectual in April when Uranus goes into Gemini, which is another air sign. And the other thing at the end of this week is that, of course, we have a full moon on Sunday. And it's in the sign of Leo, which is the opposite sign of Aquarius. And it's the warmth, it's the heart, it's the enjoyment, the fun, the play, the dating, the like, haha, like the really just you being able to shine and be a warm being with a sense of light, with a sense of heart, with a sense of unique purpose, which is going to be a balm in this time of otherwise very group-oriented intellectual breakdown of time, with everything happening in Aquarius so heavy, so much about, oh my God, it's our mind, but we also need to move out of our mind and see beyond our mind and realize we are not our mind. And so I like this full moon in the sign of Leo, even though the sign in Aquarius rules the full moon, which means that the Uranus in Taurus and the Venus in Aquarius mutual reception ultimately rules this full moon as well. But at the same time, the warmth of Leo is still there. And so Sunday is just going to be like a nice warm day, I think, for adding some personality, adding some heart to an otherwise super detached, like intellectual perspective. And I think because also of all these Venus transits with Mercury and the moon's trine, and then even Mars, Pluto, like Aquarius, it's not that it's so detached that we don't feel anything, right? In fact, Aquarius is where we have our groups. It's where we have the place where we feel like we do belong, belonging itself. And so with Venus there, it's really lovely because we can feel like we belong to a group, or we can find a personal connection within a larger group. And Mercury conjuncting Venus means we can articulate that, understand that, express that, and that it'll probably be received very well. And so it's not to say like Aquarius is so cold and detached. It's just by contrast, we're part of something much larger, and we are really playing our part in the play this week. Okay. And so that, I believe, is what I have. Let me know if you have any questions. Do check out the day-by-day breakdown that I just wrote a little bit, and come get a reading with me if you want. I'm probably going to offer some like group work sessions specifically around rulerships in your chart, because I find that is the most straightforwardly helpful thing in astrology is understanding the rulerships in your chart, because just like we are in right now with the mutual reception between Uranus in Taurus and Venus in Aquarius, your birth chart has rulers, like planets that are doing more of the heavy lifting. And I think that patterning of what rules what and how it all shakes down is like the direct key to you being able to see right from that mind's eye, from that Pluto perspective, what your patterns are, how to lean into them in ways that you don't have to dislike or be afraid of. Okay. So let me know if you'd be interested in some group work like that. I'll probably just offer it in a few days and see what happens. And yeah, that's all for now. I hope you have a lovely week and bye.